I'm happy to introduce Anthony Albecker. He's the McNair Scholars Director at the University of Minnesota. He got his MA in Communications from the University of Wisconsin at Superior, and he has a master's certificate in post-secondary developmental education from the University of Minnesota. And he's going to talk to us today, I think, about the McNair Scholar Program as well as diverse having diverse students at the university and how we actually interact with them and actually make them feel welcome and develop an environment where they actually can thrive. So I'll let Anthony take over, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say today.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I want to give you my profound apologies. I thought I was logging in 15 minutes early, being on time and all ready for this amazing presentation. Before we do anything more, just so I can collect my thoughts and just pull up my material. First of all, Gary, I'm going to need a little bit of support just to make sure that I have access to share my screen. There we go. Got it. The second thing is I have a poll, a quick 4-question Qualtrics survey to help understand who I'm talking to. So I want to get to know a little bit about who's here. So again, if you look in the link and if you can take about 90 seconds, just quickly complete that. All right. So it looks like the survey is populating. And I'm just trying to take a couple quick notes. And then, you know, as you all know, with Zoom, sometimes that Zoom fatigue and kind of Zoom disorientation. Gary, I'm wondering, are you in a position that you would be able to show your face, just so that I make sure that if there's any issues with communication or if I have any issues, I'm going to be jumping back between a couple of different slides and resources. And I just want to make sure that I've got somebody alive on that way to say, hey, it's working, it's not, or it's not working.
I can do that for you, Anthony.
That would be great. And one more time on your name?
Cody.
Cody, thank you so much, Cody. Cody, are you able to see my screen right now?
No, we are not. We see your background.
Oh, okay. Hold on for a second. Let's see if we can get you. Does that do anything better?
Yes, now it's up.
All right. So give me a second here. And just so you know, I am working on 3 screens here. So trying to do the best that I can to be able to kind of go through, and I'm trying to look at some of your survey data. And so one of the things I wanted to do before I even started to introduce myself, I created a seminar today that is going to be responsive to what you all need. I've had the opportunity to talk to Gary, and he was able to explain and share a little bit about saying, hey, here's what you're trying to think about as you're trying to recruit and retain underrepresented and first generation students. And so I've got a pretty good idea of where I want to go for this conversation. But there's going to be a little bit of a Mad Libs approach to this. And that Mad Libs approach is based on what I see from some of your responses, I want to be able to pivot quickly. And my goal here really today is going to be talking to you just for a short, probably like 30 minutes or so. And I'm going to try to abbreviate some of this based on the late start here. But I really want to get us into a point where we can be more discussion oriented or respond to your direct questions. And so right now, question one, do you identify as a first generation college student? No. And so roughly, it looks like probably of this group, there's probably about 40% that identify as first generation. Were you a recipient of a federal Pell Grant? That answer was definitely not, definitely yes. So it looks like about 25% of the participants, it seems like there's a 25% of the participants were received a Pell Grant. This next question is, and I'm sorry, a little bit of scrolling issues. So undergraduate student. So it looks like we've got a lot of graduate students here, and we've got some staff, and we've got faculty. So we've got about 8 faculty here. And then one more prompt, what are you trying to get out? So in a few words, what are you hoping to learn about tips in accepting an accessible program culture? So good, I'm on the same page here. So learn about how do you recruit low income and underrepresented students, got you there. Understanding of infrastructure at U of M for making impacts towards diversifying higher education. How to make the department more welcoming to BIPOC students. Understanding the McNair program and how we can interact with it. And so good, everything over here looks like it's going the right direction on how. I did that. Hey, somebody wanted to see me. I don't know who who that is here. Again, everything is all anonymous. And give me one more second just to look to see if there's anything else I can see in the data. All right, good. Good news, Gary. And Cody, looks like we should be on track here for this. So what we're going to do is, unfortunately, with just some of the, you unfortunately get to see a little bit of my lecture notes. Cody, can you see this okay, this first slide?
Yes.
All right, good. So again, today, we're going to really focus on recruiting and retaining underrepresented first generation college students. And so just let me get started by first a little bit about me. As Gary said, I'm the director of the Trio McNair Scholars Program. I've been director of this program since 2012, and I've been affiliated with the program since 2004. A little bit about me. I am a first generation college student myself, first generation professional. I came up through foster care, and this work is very meaningful to me because I'm an alum of the Trio support of the federal Trio programs. I am married to an advanced practice nurse, Julie. I've got 2 wonderful kids, and any of my free time is around water. Part of my identities are my Chicago roots, again, the first generation. And then outside of my work, I'm really into advocacy for both education, sustainable building, and advocating for healthcare. So I'm really, I'm a political geek. I enjoy being outdoors and then doing a lot of different things with my hands. And again, just advocating in those different areas. So as I set the stage here, let me just kind of start out. And what I'll do is I'm going to start out at a broad perspective, because what you shared, what you came here for, was to understand a little bit about the McNair program, and then understanding how the McNair program takes and works to try to help diversify the academy of future faculty of diverse perspectives and backgrounds. But then also just say, hey, what are some of those other things to be thinking about? What are some of those collaborations, other techniques, strategies? And so one of the things I do want to say before I do go is I just really say I come to you humbly. I don't know it all. I have 20 years of experience working within education at different parts of the pipeline, trying to be supportive for students who are first in their families to go to college from underserved communities, and students who are from underrepresented communities based on race and ethnicity. And so I hope today there's no mansplaining, there's nothing like this, there's no judgment. really what I want to do is just be able to share with you about a really amazing program and services that are available, and tips and strategies and other things that we have found have worked well. I'm not here to sell you anything other than hopefully a new partner that you can work with. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start out, and again, because I had this paced a little bit differently, but what I'm going to try to do to accommodate, and Cody, what time do we have until, just so I can pace myself?
Usually it goes to 4:30, 4:45. So you have, and you can go all the way up till 5, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, sounds good. So what I'm going to do to help reduce Zoom fatigue, what I will do is I'm going to talk probably about 15, 20 minutes. And then if you need a break, Cody, if you see any thumbs or anybody who says they want a quick stretch break, let me know. In the meantime, again, I hope that there's going to be some opportunities for the discussion and question and answers after. But if something comes up in the meantime, just please reach out to Cody, and Cody can translate the message. Again, I'm going to be a little bit limited on what I can see right now in terms of some of the comments here. So I'm going to look to you, Cody, to facilitate that.
And Anthony, can you go full screen, or is that not possible?
Here, let's try to do that for you. I'm going to stop share. We're going to get this, folks. We will get this. How's that working for you?
There it is. Looks good.
Yay. Woo. All right. Oh, much cleaner. Thank you so much for that prompt. I wasn't sure what you guys were able to see. Sometimes technology, y'all know, it can be very beneficial, but sometimes it can be a little disorienting. So let me set the stage. First thing to know about is, so the TRIO McNair Scholars Program is part of a series of federally funded programs that is legislated through the Higher Education Act. And so here at the University of Minnesota, we have 3 programs. And so TRIO means 3. And here at the University of Minnesota, we do have 3 programs. And so we have an Upward Bound program, which takes and helps students who are first generation, income eligible, underrepresented by race and ethnicity, and helps from that transition from high school to college. Student Support Services is a program that takes and helps students from those same backgrounds once they get here to the University of Minnesota to provide a really strong foothold to be able to take and support them in their academic ambitions, to be able to apply for their major, and just to help set the stage for timely graduation. And on the end of the TRIO pipeline is the McNair Scholars Program. And here at the University of Minnesota, we have had a McNair Scholars Program since 1991. So we are one of the oldest programs, continuously funded programs in the country. And as I'll share here shortly, there's over 189 federally funded McNair programs. Now, what I want to really stress here is that at the University of Minnesota, as you can see here, we have served over 12,000 first-generation low-income and underrepresented students. We have nationally recognized models. Some of the legislation that is actually drafted in the books and that is law is created here at the University of Minnesota, and particularly by my predecessor and the predecessors of the programs for student support services and Upward Bound. And so what I want to stress here is sometimes you'll see this notion, this community of TRIO, and you'll think it's one thing. In some ways, it is. These are programs that came out of the civil rights movement and the war on poverty to take and address some of the inequities within the pipeline. And these programs over the years have grown to, there's 8 other TRIO programs. Some of you may have heard of, like Upward Bounds or Veterans Up and Brown or Talent Search, recognizing that for us to diversify the academic pipeline, if we want to do that for college, we just can't start right before college. You have to start earlier. You have to start out in middle school. You have to kind of have these other programs. And then particularly some of the needs when it comes down to STEM or other particular disciplines. So there's 7 of the TRIO programs here at the university. We have 3. And the thing I want to stress here is that these grants are they're all separate multi-year, multi-million-dollar grants that are meant to support that particular aspect of the pipeline. And again, for the McNair Scholars Program, our job is to really work with undergraduates to help propel them into master's and PhD programs. And again, for eligibility, it's our students, for us to be eligible to serve, must qualify both as first in their family to not get a 4-year degree and be income eligible, meaning that they, and not just income eligible, but receive the highest needs or pretty much close to max of the Pell Grant. And the one thing to know about these TRIO programs is these TRIO programs were designed really in a way to say, you know what, as taxpayers, we provide funding for the Pell Grant and other scholarships. And these programs are meant to be a resource for the students. So if you get, the best way to explain this is, imagine giving somebody the keys to a new car, but not giving them the rules of the road or how to maintain that vehicle. It's not a good investment. And so what these programs are meant to do is to really help support these students who are who need some additional support throughout the pipeline, to help be catalysts for change within institutions, to be able to be more supportive of students based on economics and race. And so here at the University of Minnesota, as you can see, long time, combined 157 years of service to the University of Minnesota. And we are housed in the University of Minnesota, or in the College of Education and Human Development. So while we are housed in the College of Education and Human Development, we are serving every program or every college, including other system important campuses on that. So with that said, Cody, I'm just going to look to make sure that you can still hear me. Give me a thumbs up. All right. So I am having an issue getting over here. So when we talk about the service to the University of Minnesota, I shared with you just a little bit about how long we've been around, continuously funded. A couple other things to really align our work to the University of Minnesota. So we are aligned with the Board of Regents resolution on diversity, which is to enhance the admissions pipeline, supporting 4-year graduation rates, engaging in research, readying for application and admission to graduate school. Throughout annually, all 3 programs here, we bring in roughly $1.3 million to serve 428 students. 100% of students are from low income, first generation, and underrepresented backgrounds. 90% are served are low income and first generation. And so again, the programming that we're going to be talking about and some of the practices and frameworks and how we approach our work, these are comprehensive, holistic developmental services that have a lot of quantitative and qualitative data to back them up. And so one of the things too to know is that in addition to university related guidelines and reporting, we have to annually meet ambitious objectives. So we have an environment of just continual evaluation and innovation and how we're trying to take and meet these goals. So for the McNair, so that was a little bit about the 3 TRIO programs here, a little bit, again, macro 50,000 foot perspective of the federal TRIO programs, again, trying to serve the entire pipeline. And so again, for the McNair Scholars Program, at the end of the day, you're going to see here, it's about how do we increase the rate of doctoral program application, matriculation, and degree attainment by first generation college students who are underrepresented in graduate schools. And so what we do is we provide research experience for them, graduate school preparation, and then the 3rd strand of our program is about leadership, development, and resiliency. So that's trying to capture all those non-cognitive skills, trying to give some of that cultural and navigational capital to help these young adults look to and aspire for those advanced degrees. And so our main goals are really, at the end of the day, 40% of our bachelor degree recipients will be enrolled in a post-bac immediately following their undergraduate degree. And then what happens is within 3 years, we get like 95% of our students are going on to graduate school. 90% of first-year grad students will continue to be enrolled into the 2nd year. So our charge is not only preparing these students for graduate school, but one of our objectives is, do they, once they get into graduate school, do they persist into that 2nd year? And so I'm pleased to say that our numbers are close to 100% on that. Once they do get in there, they take off and fly. And then 10% will attain a doctorate degree within 10 years of receiving their bachelor's degree. And right now, our numbers are closer to like 13%. And so that's 13-fold over the national average. And as I'm going to take you through here just really quickly, is just some of the data and some of the needs. So as we think about the McNair program, since 1991, we've had more than 150 faculty from across the University of Minnesota take and serve as mentors, who have volunteered their time to take and do this. And we have many who have served for over 20 years. And then the important thing too is we are part of a national network of McNair programs, of over 180 other programs. And the University of Minnesota, since they started tracking McNair scholars to the University of Minnesota, have received like 1,038 applications from 876 McNair scholars applying from 175 plus universities. And so 110 of these are University of Minnesota McNair scholars. And so what that tells us is, as the university seeks to diversify, particularly based on first generation income eligibility, and also students underrepresented by race and ethnicity, we are definitely pulling our weight. We are a small program with a disproportionately large weight in our value and what we bring to the University of Minnesota. Now, one of the things I want to share here quickly is, and what I'll do is I'll follow up with Gary on this, and I'll get you the link to this. But should you be interested, this link, the PowerPoint that I'll send to Gary, will be hyperlinked, and it'll take you to this McNair program guide. So you as taxpayers, you as students, you all as ambassadors to the University of Minnesota, you have a right to know how your taxpayers are being spent. And this pitch deck, this is a pitch deck. I never present it all in one place, but it's a roughly 63-page guide, which really talks about the McNair Scholars Program in just a really dynamic way, really talking about how a program, a small federally funded program like the McNair Scholars Program, is taking and trying to power the next generation of scholars and industry leaders. So it will have everything. It's all hyperlinked, where you can go in and look at, why is the need? Why is it based on class and race and ethnicity? Who is getting into graduate programs or PhD programs, and who's not? It's a range of data which will talk about our program model. It'll talk about our quantitative success. It's going to talk a little bit about how the work that we do, how we do it. It's going to talk about the return on investment, and it's going to share a little bit about some of the resources we have. But what I wanted to do just briefly, and I'm sorry, Cody, because this unfortunately I don't think I can get this in a full page just right off the bat. I just want to use this to kind of as a couple quick talking points. So when we talk about the need for McNair, this is something that faculty and administrators and many graduate students are aware of as well. We know who's in graduate programs. We know who are PhD and who are our faculty. And so you can see a little bit on the need of just talking about, based on income and based on race, who are faculty and who are not. And so at the end of the day, the objectives of the McNair program are, can we help those who are low income and first generation and students who are underrepresented based on race and ethnicity? Can we prepare them for successful application, matriculation to graduate school? That's one of the objectives. But then if this was a card game, our highest hand is, can we inspire and prepare these young adults to want to be faculty, to be future faculty, to help diversify and provide a range of diverse perspectives on here. And so again, with this PowerPoint, I'm going to kind of go very quickly through it. You're going to see who the McNair supports, the critical barriers, what we're trying to do. And so again, I've tried to put this pitch deck together in just a quick way that any administrator, faculty, anyone who wanted to look can take and look and see and look underneath the hood. And so we already know too, why do we need to diversify our workforce? It's the right thing to do morally, economically, national vitality, all these other things. And so when we start to look and say, okay, where are some of those needs? What is some of those shortages? And so here you'll see some just brief examples, based on U.S. Department of Labor data, Minnesota state labor. And so again, some of this stuff will look pretty straightforward. I've already shared a little bit about what we're trying to do, but this is where we're coming. We'll talk about a little bit later. Is like, how do we do it? Like, how do we apply a cultural capital framework to McNair? How, I shared with you the 3 strands of our program with research, graduate school preparation, and leadership development. And so we know that, what are some of the barriers that students face based on not having the cultural or family capital or the social capital or the navigational capital. And I can speak through being a first generation college student coming through foster care, not having for sure that navigational capital to be able to take and get through. And so again, you can see a little bit about how we use a cultural capital framework and what we're trying, how we take and serve that. This over here, and I'm just going to do maybe one or two more where I'm just going to stop and just say, hey, just as you're looking at this down the road, you know, one of the questions that we'll probably get to, or as we discussed, like, what does your programming look like? Why does it look like what it does? If you ever have any questions, you'll be able to come in here and kind of look at this logic model of saying what our resources are, you know, what the services are that we're providing, what the students are gaining from it, how we're assessing this, and then again, what are the data sources and documentation that we're using to kind of do this, keep this feedback loop, all with the point of saying, how are we diversifying the academy? How are we supporting students who are traditionally from underserved and underrepresented backgrounds? Cody, how are we doing? Any yawns over there yet? Seems like everybody's still staying with us.
I think we're good.
All right, so hang in, it's 4:11. I think I got about 10 more minutes of talking, and then we're gonna open this up and be flexible to what the community needs. Again, you'll see a little bit about the comprehensive curriculum. You'll see a little bit about that. We already talked about the program objectives, but where we're going right now, what I wanted you to just kind of take you through is you're going to start to see, you know, what are McNair Scholars Advanced Degree Completion. And something I really want to clarify here is for the McNair Scholars Program and TRIO programs, being first generation, being from an underserved community or underrepresented community does not mean any student is less than. It's saying that the race is not similar to their privileged peers. And it's acknowledging that the starting line and the race is not fair. And really what the McNair program is meant to do is really provide and try to do the best that we can to support these amazing students who have already shown tremendous resiliency just to be here. And for those of you who are first generation college students, for those of you who are your first generation graduate students, kudos to you. You know, it really shows your resilience and that your life perspective and everything that you're able to bring into your studies to help kind of change it and make it the academy a better place for all. But here's where I'm going at with this. Is if you ever want to look and see a little bit about what the outcome is of our small program, you're going to be able to take a look at this. And one of the things I'll send Gary to, I'll send him the PowerPoint, but then we can also track since 2013, how many applications have we gotten from McNair Scholars, right? So if you're looking to recruit, not only recruit, like if you have a faculty position, you know, we're able to take and send to our program partners to say, hey, do you know anybody who would be interested in applying here? Or, you know, being able to say, who are the McNair Scholars who are even in your program? Right? Or how many students applied to your graduate school program who are McNair Scholars but opted not to matriculate? So we've got some of these data sets that may be illuminative for the department on that. But anyway, one more minute of just kind of showing you through, again, just orienting you to this really dynamic resource, because we're not going to be able to get to everything here today. But you're going to see the quantitative results. You're going to see the propensity score analysis that we did, the largest in the country. All these other things. You'll see a little bit about who are McNair faculty who are now here in the University of Minnesota system, all these other things. So with that said, again, more information than you ever want to know, including like the return on investment on that. And again, that's going to be hyperlinked over here, so you'll be able to take and see that. So as I shared to you before, we are a small program, but with a large, wide net. And so here, and first of all, I want to give amazing credit to our wonderful partners at the University of Central Florida who gave me permission to share this. This is an image that we use for our annual McNair Promising Practices Institute. So just photo credit to University of Central Florida for that. But as I shared a little bit before, the federally funded McNair program, annually, the funding allocation is roughly $51 million. There's 187 McNair programs across the country, and here's a sampling of that. The number of participants across the country is 5,242. And then the average cost per participant is roughly close to $10,000. So here at the University of Minnesota, we're closer to 9,500. And the money that we spend, roughly 60% goes directly to students in terms of providing them fellowships, money so they can actually take work off and invest in research. It goes into research stipends, it goes into living allowances or room and board to take and really help them. And so you'll notice here, if you kind of look, you'll see here in the state of Minnesota, we have Augsburg, we have Morris, we have Bemidji, St. Olaf, and St. Scholastica are other institutions who have a McNair program. And so again, a pretty big, pretty amazing community of support that we have here. Now, one of the things that I wanted to kind of share a little bit, and again, I'll open this up to conversation because again, running a little bit late has kind of thrown me off, but I want to be so mindful to get to this discussion part, is, you know, when we talk about the challenges that first generation income eligible underrepresented students face, those issues did not go away because of COVID, right? They are exacerbated. And so some of the challenges that every institution has been dealing with and trying to create an inclusive environment to diversify their department and their faculty and their students and all those other things, those challenges have just become even more difficult, right? And so as we think about some of the challenges and some of the programs, because when we do talk a little bit about, hey, what is it actually that we do? You know, what are some of the paradigms or ways that we approach our work? I think it'd be ridiculous for us to talk about that without addressing some of the COVID-19 impacts that we're dealing with real time. And so as we can tell, and again, some of the data that I want to share with you that I've got presented here, these are challenges that are identified via student survey data that we've administered with our McNair scholars. This is information that has come out and it's been gleaned from the CERU data, the institutional cross the University of Minnesota in partnership with other Research One's, their data, the CERU data. And it's also about what the Council for Graduate School findings are starting to come out and show. And so the challenges when we talk about this is because of the overnight transition to virtual programming and the other factors, you know, we know that the significant disruptions to student lives are, I can't even put words to it, but it impacts absolutely every facet of life. So obviously we can see the personal, interpersonal, family, peers. We can see the health, both the physical and the psychological. And then it's the economic and financial challenges, right? So we can see that the economic impact on families and on their family and their personal incomes and economic situations, these are all in their own right can be derailers, but they're all together. There's a lot of different challenges here. And because of these challenges, we see that prospective students, and again, when I'm talking about prospective students, again, I want to be clear, we're talking about students who identify as from underserved or underrepresented first generation students. One of the things that they're saying is right now, their interest in graduate school is changing and that their enrollment might be delayed. So students who are thinking about graduate school right away are saying, hey, we need a little bit of a more time to think about that. Students are saying, hey, they intend to complete their undergraduate degrees, but that they may need more time. So it's not only that they'll go to graduate school a little bit later, but again, they really know that they'll cross the finish line for their undergraduate degree. But again, because they're having to work more or be responsive to their home circumstances that they might not be able to. One of the things that we do know is that as I know we've got students, graduate students in the audience today, and I know we've got faculty, and I know we've got amazing staff. We all know that we're all operating while stressed and strained in so many facets of our life. And so when we talk about that, our cortisol levels are high. Our ability to think sometimes as clearly or be our best selves are challenged right now. And so when we talk about that, you know, that is something that having to really think about in that challenge, you know, where maybe grades aren't really being really indicative, or having to write that paper while dealing with all of that is maybe not as fully representative. But anyway, we talk about these as challenges that these students are having to go through. And then as well, one of the impacts is saying that post-career interests are changing, where some students right now, it's hard to see through the COVID fog, right? Because all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm completing my undergraduate, I want to go to graduate school, but then you start to look at the sticker shock, or you start to say, hey, you know, maybe I can't do it. It's maybe hard, again, because as we talked about, having to make decisions while stressed or strained, or all these other things are really impacting post-graduate career interests. The opportunities, right? So these are some key challenges. And so when we start to talk about some of the opportunities, there's some really unique opportunities for programming to be able to support students from underserved and underrepresented backgrounds. to create an intentional bridge back to graduate school during gap years. There is different opportunities that individuals can take on admissions messaging, being able to say, hey, to scholars, having like a little portal just on your website saying, hey, are you coming back after a gap year? Here's a couple of welcome videos, or here's a couple of things to consider, or here's some additional resources. So that messaging is really talking to some of these students. It's about that direct support, putting more time into it of just saying, hey, knowing that these students are going to be responsive to that high touch point, that being able to talk to a person or having access to that support person there. And then the opportunities for connection point events, with faculty and alum. And so as we think about this too, another opportunity is that we're hearing from students and that we believe could be much better in support of students is more robust career services oriented supports that are highlighting degree opportunities and transferability, right? Again, as a graduate student, some of these young adults are going to be thinking to themselves, wait a second, what happens if there's been a disruption in the field that I'm trying to go into? How do they think about and be reminded of, hey, oh, wait, here's other ways that I can leverage my degree, or yeah, here's that transferability. The most important thing is like the make self and community care a core component of academic culture. And I very explicitly, right, the rigor and self-care, self and community care can go hand in hand. And just saying that, really being mindful of, what is the language that a department has? What do faculty or administrators or staff have? What is their statement talking about self-care? How do they model that maybe in their advising statements or philosophies or in team meetings? And trying to create wellness plans. This is something that we can see the Council for Graduate Schools is starting to really recommend, of saying, hey, have a wellness plan as part of the department lexicon. Just saying, hey, as you're checking in, obviously meet the needs of the research, meet the needs of the teaching, meet the needs of the mission of the work that you're doing, but build into that part of that wellness plan. And again, it's not only about how you're taking care of yourself. Good self-care is good community care. How are you creating an environment in which it is a robust care and intentionality about talking through some of these things? And so again, just a couple of things that we talk about, some of the challenges that are exacerbating the already difficult work that we have in supporting our students from underserved and underrepresented backgrounds. But these are some things that can show some really good outcome. And I'm almost done talking here, almost done. And then the final thing is, is there a multifaceted community of scholar support for students, right? Is there a model within a department or an academic environment that fosters multiple mentor models, meaning that, students are supported by different faculty instead of maybe getting siloed into just, so they get those different perspectives from different faculty. And then are there the spaces for both the culturally congruent and congruent mentorship? So me as a white cisgendered male, I'm a pretty empathetic related driven guy. I have my own life experience, but can I truly understand the experience of others who identify as a different race, ethnicity, other things like that? And saying, as you're developing those communities, are those communities of support where it's both congruent and also culturally congruent on that? So again, I am going to, I just kind of feel a little bit off foot just based on that start time, but what I'll do right now is one of the really awesome things. I have a couple more slides to do, but I think I can get to those when I respond to what I anticipate some of your questions will be. But I did want to just kind of give bases to some of the amazing team that we get to work with. So as we start to talk about partnerships and collaborations and how we can work intentionally together, I just want to let you know that this work is not done in a silo. I've got an amazing team with Kayla and Amani and Bai, and then we've got Melissa, and then we've got amazing student colleagues, and we've got great campus partners in the graduate school. We've got great supportive leadership with Interim Dean Michael Rodriguez and Dr. Nicola Alexander. It's amazing faculty. So the things that we talk about or the approaches that we have are coming from a very multi and interdisciplinary environment, because one time I could be talking to you all, and then the next I could be talking to somebody within political science or art history. And what's really great, it's a great cross-pollination. And then the important thing is an amazing trio community that I shared with you, where we just have a lot of really amazing partners around the country that we can go through. So with that said, I feel like I just talked your ears off. You guys were all very patient. I didn't hear you complaining. Oh, what's that, Cody? You had the mute button on? No. Are we in a position where we can open this up to question and answer? Are we in a position where we can start to maybe see some, anybody?
Yeah, so the webinar format does not allow us to actually bring everyone into the same room. However, people, if they have questions, can put them in the question and answer, and I can read those off to you, the chat, or if anyone wants to ask a question directly, we can open their mic and they can do that. So you just raise your hand. It's on the participants list. We do have a few questions already, Anthony. The first one comes from Rebecca. Rebecca says, being someone who is a first-generation college student, how do you reach out to parents who are pushing their kids to get a technical degree rather than a 4-year degree, 4-year plus degree?
Okay, so the question is, the first generation is talking about maybe some family or peer relationships that are pushing for that technical education than a 4-year degree. Okay, give me a second to just reframe my mind here a little bit on that. At the end of the day, with the McNair program, we have the opportunity to work with amazing students who they don't have the navigational or cultural capital through no fault of their own to be able to recognize what are potential opportunities. One of the things that the data tells us is we have a number of students who will maybe come in and maybe have a limited understanding of what those pathways can be. I can think about my own experience thinking about, oh, the only way is to be a teacher or a doctor. And for those families that have maybe some of that discussion or that pressure, if you will, or that discussion saying, hey, you know, that technical degree versus that 4-year degree, that's where I would really encourage anyone to be able to take and leverage the range of resources that they have here. It's not only through programs like the McNair Scholars Program, it's really working with the departmental academic advisor. It's working with the career services team as well. And Cody, I want to make sure, because I want to circle back, because I'm answering the question one way, but the asker might also have just a different frame on this that I can also address. But for this particular route, one of the things is how do we take and surround these students by really good qualified resources that will allow them to effectively analyze and evaluate the return on investment of significant degrees. So there's different things like career inventories. It's different things like working with that career counselor to start in, or having that good faculty, connecting with a good faculty mentor to be able to say, hey, here's the vision, here's the view of, if you go this route, here's what you can do. You know, and I want to be clear, because a technical, vocational technical education, tier degree, those are valuable. The trades are valuable, everything like that, right? The question is, are we putting these amazing first generation students who might not have some of the same perspectives, are we putting them in a position to ask the right questions and have the qualified staff and support systems that can take and help them make an informed decision?
Great. Okay, thank you. The next one is from Aaron, and Aaron says, are there any trends in terms of which colleges or fields have more McNair Trio scholars at the University of Minnesota? And then the second part of the question, and if so, do you know if support mechanisms or promotional efforts by those colleges drive this, or is it simply because of students' interest or choice of field?
That is a really dynamic question, and I want to make sure, because we only have our short time here together. The short answer is there seems to be a broad representation of students and where they get their master's and PhDs from across the university. It happens to be that the College of Education and Human Development seems to have a home court advantage, and that the number, like the most number of applications that come in for a graduate school program is the social work program, both the PhD and the master's program. We also have a number of students who go on to like the family social science. A lot of McNair scholars, they're really driven on how they give back to their communities, how they take and correct the ills within policies and systems. And so they're in that very caring, helping type profession. So after that, the College of Biological Sciences is a very large recipient of McNair Scholars Programs. And so what I would encourage you to do to to be more targeted in that response, when you go and you look at the PowerPoint or you go to the McNair website, you'll see a list of specifically who are the biggest recipients right there, who are the biggest programs. So you'll be able to see that. And then you'll also not only be able to see what graduate school programs they're applying to or matriculating to, but you're also going to be able to see a quick scatter shot of where are students coming from. So we know that the University of Minnesota has a regional advantage. So students who are at St. Scholastica, Bemidji, Augsburg, St. Olaf, even University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, University of Stevens Point, University of Superior, there's a home court advantage for the University of Minnesota. So we can see that those institutions feed that. So that was maybe a bonus answer of saying the first answer is please go check out that pitch deck, and that'll tell you who the greatest recipients are of applications to the University of Minnesota from McNair Scholars. And the second would be, where are they coming from? You know, what is their home institution?
And I think the second part of the question was, is there any like the mechanisms or promotional things that some colleges are doing differently in order to drive students in? Is there anything you had to say to that, or?
At the end of the day, we really advise our students, and all students, just to make sure that they don't put all their eggs in one basket. We try to teach them, where they have leverage, where they make sure that they apply to multiple institutions. For instance, University of Minnesota McNair scholars are applying, they have to apply to roughly 8 to 10 different programs around, right? Because that has impact and gives them negotiation skills when they start to understand, what kind of financial aid they take and that they get. What I will tell you is Derek Manis is somebody who works in the graduate school. I hope that somebody within your department knows who Derek is, because Derek was the diversity recruiter for the graduate and professional programs here at the University of Minnesota. He just retired in January, and they'll be naming his replacement. But the way that we approach this is not trying to specify a particular program. We're really trying to say, all right, a student's interested in the University of Minnesota and they're interested in a particular program. Our first goal, like if a student reaches out to me, is to get right to that department, right? So I don't know if that's maybe a too long-winded a way, but is that addressing your question, Cody, or the questioners?
Yes, I think so.
What I will tell you, there is a trend though, and if there is one thing, it's some of the healthiest relationships we have with programs throughout the entire campus are those programs that are sending me like their newsletters, their departmental newsletters to say, hey, here's what's going on. Hey, we're hiring for this position. Oh, we've got this new programming, or we've got this new departmental funding opportunity. And when I get those, and when I get all these inquiries, or Derek gets some of those information, we're able to put that on the radar of not only University of Minnesota McNair scholars, but our partners from across the country. And so again, we have this really awesome neural network where, again, I've got somebody from Penn State, my colleague at Penn State, saying, hey, I got a student who's interested in these programs at the University of Minnesota. Who can you connect with, right? And the more I'm aware, and I love to read those newsletters because it kind of gives us a good litmus test of what's going on in those departments.
Great, thank you. Jenny has a question. What are the largest challenges that you see to first-generation students, and what are the disparities between white and BIPOC first-generation students?
Okay, hold on for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. What are the largest challenges that you see for first-generation students, and then what are the disparities between white and BIPOC first-generation students?
Oh, that is a great question. That is a dissertation question. Give me a second just to frame that out here on how to effectively communicate, because there are significant, there's similarities, but there are significant other considerations. Let me start out with the income eligibility in the first generation. It goes back to what I was highlighting a little bit earlier. It is having not having the cultural or navigational ability to really understand maybe what's available to them, or that both underserved and underrepresented students, because they don't have that same cultural capital as maybe their privileged peers. Because again, as we talked about, the race isn't fair for some of those students. And so all of a sudden that triggers imposter phenomenon, sitting in class saying, wait, why does it seem like somebody already has this innate knowledge, or just not really fitting in? And you know, and this is where I have to just really own, I'm a white cisgendered male. I can only speak from my lived experience of looking at students who are BIPOC, who might not have that representation of having a faculty who is representative of their culture or ethnicity. That is a very big factor. I think when we talk about navigating through a PWI, a primarily white institution, you know, some of those challenges were maybe not having the space. You know, and I think about some of the, as somebody who's first generation and from an underserved background, and I remember my own imposter phenomenon and syndrome of trying to take and navigate that. At the same time, I was, you know, I had white privilege. I was able to take and kind of blend in. Our BIPOC students in many cases don't have that. It's the same challenge. They don't maybe have the same support systems at play, and then they're dealing with the overt or implicit or hidden or whatever you can, pardon my language on here, the racism of the institution that also add to that, you know, and those additional microaggressions. And so while there are some key challenges, no doubt, very clear, defined challenges that BIPOC and first generation underserved students, the important part is, how do we as an institution rise to the occasion of trying to surround these amazing young adults with the representational faculty or administrators or resources that they can go to and help process and kind of work through some of that. So that is a very deep question. And I don't think I did it as justice as I can on this short notice. Cody, can you ask the questioner if there was another particular thread they wanted?
Yeah, Jenny, do you want to ask a follow-up question? She's still on. Let me see here. I can ask her to talk here. I don't know if Jenny, did you want to follow up on that at all?
Yeah, thanks, Cody. I have a question. Also, when we talk about those disparities, I'm just wondering about our communities here in the Twin Cities. Like, are you seeing more maybe Somali kids coming in as first-gen students? Is that becoming a larger population in our community here at the university?
Absolutely, a very large, especially for the last 15 years. You know, we've seen a very large growth in students who identify as East African or Ethiopian, Somali, Eritrean, Liberian. Yes, that is something that we have seen. It follows some traditional data points that we're talking about, like for instance, with a group that we're trying to identify that the legislation does not recognize as underrepresented is students like, for instance, Southeast Asian backgrounds. You know, there's this notion that there's this overrepresentation of Asian, and again, I put in quotes, this is the language of legislation, this is the language of policymakers, saying that, you know, they will look and say, well, here's the representation of Chinese Americans or Indian Americans or Japanese Americans or Korean Americans, not looking at the absolute disparities that are impacting students who are from Southeast Asian populations that are highly represented here in the Twin Cities. So Jenny, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much, Anthony.
And great questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Gary had a follow-up. He was asking, is it possible to be a mentor to a McNair student as a faculty member in CFANS?
Absolutely. We have had a strong, this is something where I work with, I worked with Carl Lorenz. I work with Jody Gray right now. I work with Sandra Mitchell. I'm working to say, how do we take and enhance the representation of CFAN students within the McNair program? And we're unsure how we can better just be able to say, hey, how do we support these CFAN students? I had the opportunity to do a small data project for Sandra Mitchell, and I'm blanking on Joseph's last name, who is the former diversity coordinator for CFANs, where the data is so clear about who are faculty in CFANs based on race and ethnicity and who are not, right? The representation within some of the agricultural programs within the faculty ranks, we know there's a lot of work to be done there. And so I'm very open. And so when Gary was asking me to come and speak, of course, this was something, and I called Jody right away just to be able to, I was really excited to get that request. So yes, if we identify a student and they're accepted into the program, absolutely. And so one of the best things that can happen is now that we're having this meeting, now that I've got this connection with Gary, I'm able to go and strategically reach out to Gary and just say, Gary, we're starting our recruitment right now. Here's the benchmarks. Here's the timeline. Can you help us? Can you get this to the faculty? Can you really strongly encourage this? Can you put this on the front burner? Can you help us also convey that message to your student services colleagues? Can you please just get that message? And when that happens, like the College of Biological Sciences is a really good example of this with Associate Dean Greenstein, he's somebody who I work with in that college to be able to say, hey, I need help recruiting in these particular departments. And so long story short, yes, if you're a CFANS faculty, you can be a mentor. Number two is please, when I send those emails this fall, or if you have questions or you think you might have a student who would be interested, please send them our way. One of the things that we know, I was using that term imposter phenomenon, right? There's this notion, I could have been a McNair scholar, but I remember I'm like, oh, that's for the smart kids. It seems so foreign to me. And think about how many amazing, talented young adults we have out there within CFANs throughout the entire University of Minnesota who don't maybe have somebody who's able to give them that nudge. And so by having a good department chair who can remind this messaging when we work with our student affairs professionals within the units to be able to say, hey, can you help us maybe identify some of the students that we can reach out or just directly refer them? So again, a little bit bonus answer to that question of can you be a mentor? Absolutely. But there's some additional ways that you can take and help, to ensure that you can maybe find a candidate that that you could mentor.
Great. I'm not seeing anything else right now. If anyone has an additional question or just wants to discuss something, feel free to raise your hand and we can put you on, allow you to talk. Otherwise, Gary, did you have any other follow-up? Gary's still there. Just give it a few minutes here just to make sure.
Tony, just a question for you. So how many participants do we have total? I haven't seen the most recent.
Today, I think we had about 30, just north of 30. So, oh, Gary just in the chat said, retention, what is the best strategy? I guess that's something he'd like to talk about maybe more.
Sure. Give me 1 second. Gary, any additional context that you want to give just in regards to, you're talking about undergraduate to graduate retention, like what, give me a little bit more.
It could be either undergrad or graduate student. It doesn't matter at this point.
Okay, yeah. So as you look at our program deck, that really that 60-page, kind of resource guide, whatever that you can click on in there. One of the things for that retention is, and this goes back to that slide that I was sharing where I'm like, oh, we can't really talk about what we do without addressing COVID-19 implications, right? This is a completely different conversation, right? In this day and age right now where students are dealing with so many more things. And so for that retention is number one, it's the most simple thing is, what are those additional ways that departments like faculty or student affairs staff are making those touch points, right? What are those different things that just kind of reaching out, following up, just seeing how those students are doing. What are those intentional events that you're trying to create, to try to get some of that community? What are some of the efforts that the department are taking by reaching out to other amazing university resources? I can only give you one perspective, right? But I know that there are some really amazing people in MK, the Multicultural and Academic Excellence program. There's excellent people in the MLK program that can really, in MK and MLK program, in OED, can really get to the heart even more succinctly and effectively regarding the support of BIPOC students and the range of resources available to them. And so when we think about that retention, it really comes down to that personal care. It comes down to, are those particular touch points with those students that maybe go a little bit above and beyond, particularly as students are reporting feeling such isolation right now, particularly first generation low income students. The other thing about retention too is how do you use data to be able to inform who are your students right now? So for instance, if you go into A+ or you're using PeopleSoft, are your program staff, are they able to go in and use that data to be able to say, hey, we can identify, we know who these students are, right? And so that can really strategize, the students who are more at potential risk of retention issues. So being able to take and use that and be very strategic. And again, so some of the additional programming, it's leveraging the other resources that you have within the university to recognize that you're not alone in this journey. Those are like my three most immediate responses to your question, Gary, about how to retain students. The final thing I would just say is just compassion too. Just this, be kinder than necessary, right? I think sometimes just those little acts of kindness can go a long way, particularly for these young adults who are overly stressed, and rightfully so. And just having that additional humanizing connection, especially if they feel that they're in a system that's very hierarchical, or if they may be the only one who looks like themselves, right? And some of those additional ways to be empathetic, to find relatedness, and to do those other strategies are all good ways that can take and help with the retention.
So one thing I was just going to mention, I know that for graduate school, it's often, kind of like relationship based, where you find, a lab and professor that you like, or and has an opening. So how does that dynamic within like the natural sciences fit to the McNair program? Like, does someone come in and they're already kind of have identified where they want to be when they're applying, or is it they apply first and then they identify later?
Great question, Cody. This is a very layered process. And so in the ideal model, the University of Minnesota, when we're selecting scholars, our ideal model is try to identify these students during their freshman and sophomore year, recruit them and onboard them this spring, and we're in that process right now, that spring for the new cohort, that's early spring of that year. And because once we do that, what we're able to do is we want, first of all, want to have students who have a general idea of what they want to do. And they also have some broad-based advanced courses that show that they've got some of the technical proficiency to do that. So if we have a student who's coming in and saying, hey, I want to do applied plant science, or I want to do biomedical, whatever, do they have the core courses, and where is their standing within some of those core courses? The chemistry, the physics, the biology, the math range, etc. Right? So we will work with some students who, maybe 50% of students, they're diehard. They know exactly what they want to do. But then 50% of students are like, I think this is what I want to do, but I'm not sure. And that they're open, right, to maybe some of these other things. And so what we'll do is when we accept the students, we will work with that particular department. So for instance, we were working with a student who's an animal science student. And we're like, I don't know anything about animal science. And so and this is the same thing, if we have an applied science student, I'd come and reach out. I'd reach out to my wonderful partners in CFANS and to CBS and say, hey, we've got this student who's really interested. Here's the profile. Here's some of the things that we see. Here's what the student's really expressing about their interest in their masters and PhDs. Here's some of the barriers that they're identifying. We believe we can support this. We just need your help in identifying who would be that really good faculty mentor to take and help them going. So then they come in, we work really diligently. We don't work in a silo. We'd be working with our partners within the department to say, hey, can you help us out here a little bit? get that faculty mentor state in place. Then that summer, they engage in 10-week advanced research program. And I do want to clarify, we are a summer and academic year program. It's like a braid. We've got one new cohort coming in as the second and third year cohorts are kind of going in. It's always just at a different phase. But for our newest students, it's getting that first initial mentor established, doing that research with them over 10 weeks over the summer, maintaining that relationship over the fall. And in the meantime, in the summer, they're applying for additional funding or finding other research opportunities. We don't look as McNair as the one and done. We look at McNair as saying, hey, let's help demystify what the graduate school process is, the application process, the research process. Let's talk about some of the real barriers and challenges that there are based on race, economics, the academic culture, those types of things. Let's try to build your skill sets towards that. And then our goal is during that following summer, they're working in a different research capacity or working maybe with the same faculty, but growing, doing a publishable article or something like that. But then that next year, we're working with them to say, what can we do to get you another experience that's going to broaden that? And in many cases, we'll say, hey, doesn't make sense. Is there another school that we want them to go? Because we know for their CV development, the broader range of experience that they have is just going to set them up. And so we're kind of progressive. And so the question you were asking was based on that mentorship. It's very comprehensive, and it's part of thinking about that longer term goals of what they want.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm not seeing anything else. So, yeah. Do you have anything in closing or?
Sure. First of all, let me just start out with the obvious. I am so sorry for running late. That was genuinely my bad. I had 4 o'clock and I had my calendar held for 3:45 to plug in early. So I'm sorry if I was not my absolute best. My amygdala was hijacked a little there coming in. I thought I was gonna have a couple minutes to have everything staged. So thank you for your grace and understanding that particular component. The second thing I'd really want to say is I believe McNair can be a really strong program partner. A food science and nutrition within CFANS is a good example of a great partnership that we have within CFANS with Dr. Joanne Slevin. Also, applied economics is another CFANS field that we work. And so I really see that there's some really great opportunity for growth within CFANS, in particular, applied plant science. The third thing I would just say is, again, I hope I didn't feel like I was in any way condescending. I hope that I was trying to do authentically, just be responsive to some very dynamic questions that you've asked, and I'm not going to have all the answers, but I hope some of what I've said has planted some seeds. I hope that it will help kind of the purpose of these seminar series to really just take and continue these conversations, because this work is never done. And just know that you always have somebody who's a candid, willing partner to be able to take and do the best I can to support in the way that I'm able to. So those would probably be my closing comments.
Well, thanks a lot, Anthony. That was really good. It's very informative, and I learned a lot about the program. And I think you gave us, and so Cody put a link in the chat box for the PDF to the McNair program. That will be very informative as well. We'll be in touch as we move forward. And I'd just like to thank you. And so maybe everyone can round of applause or however you want to do it.
Cody and Gary, everyone else is probably like, what?
No. It was like, I think I told you 3 o'clock the seminar started, so we were both wrong. So.
Yeah. So whatever happened, I hope that was a good pick up that fumble and do the best that we can.
Yes, it was good. Thanks a lot for all your efforts and letting us know. And I think it seems like a really good program that we should probably be in touch with and more frequently.
Yeah, and if I can also leverage my connections at other universities that have strong agricultural sciences, I'm happy to do that. We've got some interesting partnerships like with Cornell right now. So just again, as you're thinking, obviously, let's help our amazing University of Minnesota students in that pipeline. And as we look for some of those opportunities, don't hesitate to reach out if I can use any of my connections to be like, hey, So, all right. With that said, thank you all. I appreciate you.
Thanks a lot, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony.
Take care.
Have a good day, everyone.